Hi, so I do see lots of familiar faces, which is awesome. My name is Katie. I am a registered dietitian here in Ohio, obviously. I am the dietitian at Bassett's Health Food Store on Secor, and I also do some other stuff. I teach some basic nutrition courses at Owens for their dietetic students who are hoping to go on and become dietitians, and I also work for ProMedica a little bit in some of the hospitals, so just to kind of keep my hand in like some clinical work so I can keep up to speed in that area. But this is really one of my favorite things that I do is teaching classes in the community. So I do also do that at Bassett sometimes too. I brought some sale flyers and our class schedule for December if anyone's interested. I do a class on Paleo, and so this is kind of that combined with some other things. So I'm really going to try to keep it brief, but give you lots of information all at the same time. So feel free to ask questions as we go along. My three biggest objectives for this are to hopefully reduce sugar in your diet if you do eat a lot of sugar, to increase lots of healthy fatty acids in your diet, so to get more fats. I hope that you walk away from this not being afraid of healthy fat, and decreasing your consumption of inflammatory fats, and we'll talk about that. And those two things together, I hope, will also inspire you to kind of follow what I call the Paleo template. Some people call it the Paleo diet. I don't like the word diet. I think that's associated with like a short-term thing, and I kind of look at the Paleo lifestyle or the Paleo template as something to follow long-term. Has anyone heard of the Paleo diet before? Awesome. Has anyone followed it before, or kind of followed Paleo template? Okay. Wonderful. So just to get started, I actually fell into the Paleo lifestyle by accident. So my senior year at Eastern Michigan, where I was going for my bachelor's in human nutrition, we were all asked to follow a fad diet for 30 days. So a bunch of dietitians or students wanting to be dietitians all chose a fad diet, whether it was Weight Watchers or South Beach, and I chose Paleo. Because I had heard about it, and I was a runner, and so I was like, you know, I've heard some athletes getting great results with this. I think I'm going to go for it. Then, of course, it was like highly, I'm going to say looked down upon by a lot of dietetic professionals because, as many of you know, it doesn't involve grains. And a lot of dietitians really love to promote whole grains. So a lot of my classmates were like, oh, I don't know, that would be dangerous, no grains for 30 days. And once I really started looking at it, I asked them, what would I not be getting if I didn't eat grains? Like what specific vitamins and minerals would I be missing out if I didn't eat grains? And asking 30 dietitians that, dietitians are really skeptical and really nitpicky about things, but no one could give me an answer. So if you look at the vitamin mineral content of most vegetables and most meats and animal proteins and things like that, you're actually not technically missing any vitamins, minerals, trace minerals, anything like that from giving up grains. So I ended up following it for 30 days, and don't you know, I shaved like 10 minutes off my marathon time. Wow. So that was kind of like big inspiration for me. Like, okay, you know what, I was eating healthy. I was eating some whole grain bars, whatever it may be, for years, and you know, I just never really gotten results, and finally I was getting results. So not only was my athletic performance better, but I was also feeling better and sleeping better. Who would have known that what you're eating actually has a huge impact on quality of sleep? So that's kind of my story, and that was about 4 years ago. And for the most part, I have stuck with it. Now, since then, I have gotten a lot of land, I've had a baby, I work a lot, so of course, I refer to it as my template because I'm not 100%, perfect all the time. That's just the way it is. But most days, I stick to it. I would say I'm pretty strict paleo 90% of the time. That might be that little bit or that bad week. And then what happens is I usually feel a little bit worse, and I'm back to it the next week. So feel free to ask questions as we go. I just want to share with you that, I do work a lot, I'm busy, I'm a mom, and it's definitely doable. So it's not always pretty, and sometimes you're rushed doing food prep, but feel free to ask questions as we go. I'm going to try and walk through the sheet. I wanted to give you some decent information. The first 2 bullet points there, my first part of this, is to really show you kind of what's wrong with the way that we're eating now. And so that second bullet point there, for the first time in the history of one of the wealthiest on the planet, medical experts have warned that our younger generation may be on track to have a shorter lifespan than their parents. That is one of the saddest things I've ever read. So that's the first time that we're really considering that our children are not going to outlive their parents. Diet is huge when we look at the top 10 causes of death in the United States. Most of them are diet related. So that's a big deal. We know that these things are diet related, yet a lot of us aren't changing what we're doing to prevent those things and really help and nourish our children to grow properly and prevent future chronic diseases. So one of my next favorite quotes that I have there is actually from Food Inc. And I don't necessarily love all the things in Food Inc., but I really do love this quote. The way that we eat has changed more in the past 50 years than in the previous 10,000. So when people say, oh, we're fine, you know, my mom likes to say, oh, I ate that way, I'm fine. I just want to say, really, are we all fine? We're all actually pretty sick. I talk to people every day that have a ton of gut issues. They don't sleep. They come into the health food store all the time. Sell me something for energy. Sell me something to help with my gut. I get sick all the time. You know, I need help with my immune system. If any of you have come into baskets before and asked me to sell you something, it's pretty hard to get me to sell you a pill. Because I will talk to you about diet for 10 minutes before I'm going to sell you a pill to help with energy. Because that's really just the Band-Aid on the problem. I got the next few stats actually from the USDA website. So looking at what our diet trends are now, 63% of our calories are coming from processed and packaged foods. So I call them food products. These are all some versions of food products, right? So things that have a very long ingredient list are considered food products. So they're just man-made things really made to mimic foods. I'm going to pass this one around so you can look at it. I talk about my mom a lot because she really does try to eat healthy, but she just falls into these marketing schemes a lot, right? Like these 100-calorie packs that seem like a healthy snack that she could bring to work with her. So if we look at it, there's over 30 ingredients on here. So although it's a nice little 100-calorie pack, over 30 ingredients, we've got 4 or 5 sources of added sugar, and this isn't even sweet. This is like a Chex Mix type thing, not even sweet to people. And we've got all these different types of syrups added. So I'm going to pass that around. Compared to 100 calories of almonds. So if you look at the back of the almond ingredients, it's just almonds. So when I talk about food products versus real food, this is one of the biggest things that I'm talking about. I'm just going to pass those around so you can kind of look at the ingredients. So focusing on things that really don't have that long ingredient list, because that's where things can get a little crazy. So only 12% from plant foods, that would really be like our vegetables and fruits, and 25% from animal foods. So really, if you think about the grocery store, this really makes sense, right? Because like, think about how much room the fruits and veggies get, and then think about all those aisles. All those aisles are really just food products. When you're really following the paleo type template, you're going to stay away from those aisles really as much as possible, and you're really going to stay around the perimeter of the store, which is just a great rule of thumb anyways. Really just try to avoid going down the aisles altogether. So next on the list is whole grains, and we'll talk about what the paleo diet is in a few minutes, but you do avoid grains, all grains, even whole grains, which is a hard concept for some people to kind of wrap their mind around because traditionally that food pyramid really has whole grains at the bottom, and most of our diet is supposed to be whole grains. Now this says whole grain. Would we consider this like a healthy product because it says whole grain on it and we hear that we should eat whole grains? No, this is really a refined grain. It's been ground up and processed and put in like a pretty package for us. So that would be considered a food product. So whole grains, even if you were to get some oat groats or some whole wheat and grind it yourself to make flour, whole grains really nowadays don't resemble the wheat that our ancestors might have had a small amount of once in a while. So the structure has totally changed. It's changed for lots of different reasons, but one reason is so we can grow more faster in a shorter period of time. And we're not really going to go back to not wanting to do that. So, yes?
Talking about the almonds, we need to even sprout every almond that we buy.
Yeah, so we can talk about sprouting a little bit. Sprouting, when our ancestors might have stumbled upon a small amount of like grains or wheat, whatever it may be, they probably sprouted it, and that really created like a live food, and it decreased some of the anti-nutrients we could say. So the anti-nutrients of grains, I wrote on that list for you. Lectins and phytic acid are 2 of the most common. So those are anti-nutrients. Not only do they cause a lot of disturbances in your gut, but they also bind onto minerals and don't let you absorb nutrients from your food very well. So that's really one of the main reasons why we're avoiding grains. Now, if you sprouted them, they would be better than a non-sprouted grain, but still, historically, it would just have been a pinch here and there. It would never have been 63% of our diet. Maybe once in a great while a sprouted grain. So phytic acid and lectin are really inflammatory for our gut. I'm sure now we've all heard about all this research with our gut flora, the probiotics, like your microbiome, all that good bacteria in our gut. Those two things really inhibit the growth of good bacteria in your gut. So that right there makes me want to have people not eat them, because we've all got major gut issues going on, whether you know it or not. So because they're finding a link between bacteria in your gut and obesity, bacteria in your gut and cardiovascular disease and anxiety and depression and those things, we really want to support that gut flora as much as possible. Eating grains, unfortunately, today in 2015, just doesn't allow you to do that. So that's really one of the reasons why they have to go. I'm sure we've heard of gluten. So there are gluten-containing grains. Some people who have what's called celiac disease have an extremely inflammatory reaction to gluten. It's actually an allergic response. So although you may not have celiac, they say that 1 in 3 people have a gluten intolerance. And so a gluten intolerance isn't necessarily like gluten makes me constipated or gluten makes me bloated. That could be migraines. It could be joint pain. There are lots of other signs of having a gluten intolerance. And then you have that other word there, that gliadin. So that's a component of gluten that's actually broken down into something in your gut, a long polypeptide chain, a group of amino acids that actually acts on some of the same receptors in your brain as opiates. So that really can cause a surge in dopamine and kind of an addictive response, right? Has anyone ever thought that they have like an addiction to carbohydrates or to sugar and they constantly crave them? So when you eat a lot of sugar, it's causing a very unnatural response in dopamine, like a pleasure hormone, one that we weren't really necessarily meant to experience, maybe once in a while from some honey, but not every day, all day. So that is really a huge problem when it comes to sugar addiction. Sugar is extremely addictive. So, sometimes asking someone to give up sugar is like asking a smoker to quit smoking. Sometimes worse. I do a sugar detox group, and I had someone in my September group, who was a previous smoker years ago, say that giving up sugar for 21 days was harder than when she quit smoking. So it is hard to kind of retrain your brain, but it's definitely doable. So that kind of leads to our next thing, sugar consumption. So following the Paleo type template removes that grain component. So we are supporting healthy cognitive health, brain function, mood from avoiding grains, also gut health, supporting the growth of good bacteria. Also, it avoids all of these packaged high-carb type items. I like to call them garbage. So they're high in carbs and they're a bunch of garbage, right? So we're getting rid of all of them. But let's go through a typical day if someone were to eat a lot of this garbage. Sugar is one of the biggest things. So the American Heart Association recommends, after doing a huge amount of research and kind of grabbing a bunch of studies all together and looking at how much sugar we were eating, they say that any more than 6 teaspoons of sugar for a female or 9 teaspoons for a male significantly increases your risk for chronic disease. 6 teaspoons. You're at higher risk for death from cardiovascular disease, diabetes, insulin resistance, gut issues. So I'm going to put 6 teaspoons in here. Now, to me, that looks like a lot, right? Like, I don't necessarily add a bunch of sugar to my food every day. So I really would think, I probably don't get that, even if you eat relatively healthy food. So we're just going to quick walk through a day in my mom's shoes. I tell her the day she starts coming to my classes is the day I stop using her as an example. So I'm still waiting for it, and she's not here. So for breakfast, she's going to start out with a bowl of cold cereal, because I feel like that's a pretty standard way to start our day, right? So she's going to grab these Cheerios, high protein, because I'm always talking to her about protein. I'm always saying, first thing in the morning, you've got to get protein in, right? So she's going to get Cheerios high protein. They're actually being sued right now for this box, because it's not. 11 grams of protein with milk. So there's like 7 grams of protein in the glass of milk. So we've got like 5 grams of protein. So dumb. All right, so a cup of this cereal is going to give us 17 grams of sugar. So when I talk about teaspoons and I look at grams, grams don't seem that bad, I feel like, to most people. I always want you to convert things to teaspoons of sugar so that we can keep your tally, no more than 6 teaspoons a day. There's 4 grams in 1 teaspoon. So everyone remember that. When you look at grams of sugar, you divide by 4, and that's how many teaspoons of sugar in that serving. So we're going to have 2 cups of cereal, because a cup really isn't that much, right? 2 cups of cereal, so we've got 34 grams of sugar divided by 4. Any guesses? 34 divided by 4? So we'll say about 7 teaspoons of sugar, right? In our high-protein cereal. You're going to keep track for me? All right, so we're going to add 7 teaspoons for our cereal. And now we're probably not going to eat it dry, right? We're going to add some milk, probably a cup of milk. So there's 12 grams of sugar in a cup of milk. So we got 3 more teaspoons. Now my mom also, with her high-protein cereal, she'll get some organic milk. She's probably also going to have a little glass of orange juice. So there's about 20 grams of sugar in a small glass of orange juice. So we've got another 5 grams of sugar for her breakfast. Now, we get to mid-morning, right? She's hungry because this really peaked up that blood sugar and now it's fallen and she's hungry. So she's probably going to grab a Nature Valley granola bar maybe, because these are marketed, right? It's like a food product that's a healthy choice. So she's going to grab one of these bars, and there's 12 grams of sugar for a package. So we've got another 4 teaspoons added, and we're not even at lunch yet. Lunch she usually does pretty well. She usually has a grilled chicken salad, which I feel like is a pretty standard lunch for people to pack. She'll probably bring some Italian dressing. Let's see. She uses maybe 2 tablespoons, we'll say. That's a pretty small amount, but let's say she uses 2 tablespoons. So that's 4 grams of sugar. So another teaspoon added. Now, afternoon, she's going to be hungry because she really hasn't gotten a lot of protein that day, and she really hasn't gotten a lot of good fat. And those are the 2 things that really keep you full and sustained all day long, which is back to our paleo template. So she's hungry again that afternoon. Now, again, I talked to her about protein a lot, so this bag of jerky is like marketed to my mom. It's high in protein. It says non-GMO, verified, grass-fed, so this looks really great to her. But if you actually turn it around and look at the ingredients, there's a lot of sugar in here. So there's 3 servings in this bag. Now if you can see, it's actually not that much, right? So she's probably going to eat the whole bag because she's hungry. She hasn't gotten a lot of protein and fat in today. So there's 7 grams of sugar per ounce per serving. So you got to multiply times 3 because there's 3 servings in this bag. So 21 grams of sugar for her jerky snack. So another 5 teaspoons added to her day. Now we get to dinner. Dinner, we're going to have, I'll let you guys, up to you. We can have tomato soup and a grilled cheese sandwich, or we can have spaghetti. Spaghetti, perfect. So she's going to grab this jar of spaghetti sauce. She could use pasta, or maybe she's even going to use some spaghetti squash, because I'll give her that. She's a big fan of using spaghetti squash sometimes instead of pasta, which is awesome. So a half a cup of this has 6 grams of sugar. I'm going to guess that she's probably going to use a full cup, right, for a decent amount of pasta or spaghetti squash. So that's 12 more grams. So we've got another 3 teaspoons added for our dinner. She's probably going to have a little bit of garlic bread, and that's probably going to have another teaspoon. So, now, knowing my mom and my stepdad, since they've done so well today, since they had a high-protein breakfast, they had a natural granola bar, she packed her lunch, she ate a great dinner, she might let herself have a treat tonight, right? Maybe a little bit of ice cream or a cookie, because she really did, follow a healthy diet. So, should we let her have a little bit of ice cream or no? Should we just stop here?
Yeah.
No?
Yes.
Okay, so let's say she has a small little cup of ice cream or a few cookies. On average, that could be 20 to 30 grams of sugar. So we're going to say another 6 teaspoons, right? Now, I'm going to talk to her the next day, and she's going to ask me, what can she do for some more energy? What can she do so she doesn't get sick this winter? And why is she so tired all the time? So we've got 6 teaspoons of sugar. Any more than this significantly increases your risk for lots of chronic diseases, including mental and cognitive health. And we'll talk a little bit about that. How many teaspoons did my mom have for her healthy day?
35.
35 teaspoons of sugar. Right? So this is reason number 1 why really following a template or a paleo template, this will not happen. If this is happening on a paleo template, you are not following paleo correctly, okay? So once in a while, you might have a little bit of honey or a little bit of maple syrup, a little bit of dried fruit, that's fine, but you should never be getting this. You will always be under this if you are following paleo correctly, always, okay? So let's talk just real quick, yes?
What if you use the stevia?
Stevia's okay.
That's
Yep.
okay.
So stevia is sweet, but it's not actually sugar. So yeah, a little bit of stevia would be fine. And we'll talk more about like the specifics of paleo on the next page. So let's just look at a few of those quick bullet points for sugar consumption at the bottom. So increases your risk for cardiovascular issues. So not only does sugar cause a large inflammatory response, they actually found that it impacts the way that your heart pumps. No matter if you're skinny, obese, at a healthy weight, whatever it may be, it actually affects the pumping mechanism. Immune system, 1 teaspoon of sugar suppresses your immune system for up to 6 hours. It impacts your white blood cells for 6 hours. 1 teaspoon. So for kids that are starting out their day with a bowl of cold cereal, can you imagine why they're sick all the time if we don't have their immune system up to par? Right, so paleo breakfast, never going to happen. Always going to really be supporting your immune system. Cognitive health. So before we thought, oh, you get old, you get forgetful, you have a little bit of dementia, it's just part of the aging process. We're now realizing that diet and excess sugar and garbage consumption actually increases your risk for cognitive issues in the future, which is awesome that we know that. That's another reason, following a paleo template can be a great way to go. Inflammation and energy production. So this doesn't come with any nutrients to use it as fuel. There's no B vitamins when you eat this stuff to utilize this as fuel. So not only does it steal from your nutrient savings account, it robs you of B vitamins, leaving you extremely fatigued and tired. So yes, when you come into Bassett's and you want me to sell you something for energy, because you're tired all the time, this is going to make you very tired. Another great reason to follow the paleo template. So what is the paleo diet? So on the next page, let's kind of talk about it. So this is also known as like the Caveman Diet. I really love my second quote there. It's from Nom Nom Paleo, which is a cookbook by a paleo chef. That's really great. It says it's based on the notion that for optimal health, modern humans should go back to eating real, whole, unprocessed foods that are more healthful than harmful to our bodies. So I get a lot, oh, well, you're not really like a caveman. I mean, you're not like going out and killing animals and eating them. Yeah, I get it. Like, it's Toledo, Ohio. If I were paleo, I'd only be eating what was available in this area at this time of year. Like, I would not go to the grocery store. It's 2015. That's obviously not realistic and not going to happen. So I like this definition because it's just saying I'm eating whole foods that existed a long time ago that literally just support the structure and function of my body. That's all it is. So it's eating nutrient-dense foods that are constantly making nutrient deposits in your nutrient savings account and helping you live a healthier life, and you will feel so much better. So I kind of have a list here of reasons why I might recommend as a dietitian that someone follow this template. Insulin resistance, metabolic syndrome, it eliminates anti-nutrients. Second row there at the bottom promotes gut health. That is one of the major reasons why I recommend this. There are so many different types of disease that really stem from the gut, even though you don't realize it. So it promotes gut health, which is another great reason to include bone broth in, and Josiah will talk about that. High in healthy fatty acids and low in damaging fats. So that's my other big goal for everyone to really understand why this template is ideal, is not only because it eliminates garbage and excess sugar consumption, but it also gives you a lot of good fat, which you need for lots of reasons. So, it creates a better relationship for food. That's actually one that I feel like I benefited the most when I followed paleo. I really had to learn how to cook. My mom didn't teach me how to cook, although I won't say that. She did teach me how to cook, but I never learned how to make broth. I didn't learn how to roast the whole chicken. So we were definitely a family that was buying like chicken breasts and wrapped up in plastic, no bones, because who wants to worry about bones? That type of thing. So it does absolutely create a better relationship with food, to the point where you realize if you do spend just a few hours in your kitchen every day or even a couple times a week, you do develop that relationship, and that in itself is a huge benefit. So yes, foods. So what are some foods on the paleo diet that we eat? A lot of real food. Protein is the biggest one. So one of my biggest rules for protein, for meals in general, and paleo I should say, is that your meals really start with protein. So at every meal you should have some sort of protein on your plate, and then we kind of build up from there. So chicken, fish, beef, all types of protein are really fair game. Buffalo, venison, whatever you want. You could eat chicken and turkey 3 times a day if you wanted to. You could eat eggs 3 times a day if you wanted to. Really any protein, unless it's highly processed, especially with like nitrates or some of the cured meats like sausages and hot dogs, really those are ideal, yes.
How about lamb?
Lamb, perfect, yes, any protein. As long as it's not a protein product, like a breaded product, you always have to turn around and look at those ingredients. It's crazy, but there's actually a lot of added sugar in some of those like man-made patty type things, so you really have to watch out for those. But really, any protein is fair game. Ideally, it's pastured or organic, but that's not a deal breaker. So if you can buy pastured eggs, fantastic. They're higher in the good types of fat. Same thing with grass-fed or pastured beef, high in really good fat. So how you hear about like salmon, you're supposed to eat a couple pieces of like fatty fish a week because it's high in omega-3. Pastured or grass-fed beef is actually really high in omega-3 too. So that's the biggest difference. If you have the choice between those two, conventionally piece of beef versus the pastured or grass-fed piece of beef, the grass-fed beef is high in omega-3. The conventional is high in some of the inflammatory fats. So if you don't like salmon, that's fine. Splurge once or twice a week and buy a good piece of beef and eat that instead. You're still going to get those same great omega-3s. Now, because the fat content is different between those two types of meat, if you're going to buy conventional, which I get it, you have to get a budget sometimes, you might buy conventional, you might want to get the leaner cut, because then you're avoiding some of those inflammatory fats. So if you're going to buy pastured, grass-fed protein products, get the full fat kind. You want all that good fat. If you're going to get conventional, you might want to get the leaner and avoid some of that fat. So that's our protein. Carbs. If you follow the paleo template correctly, it's not actually a low-carb diet. Some people refer to it as like Atkins. If you look at like the average carbs that people are eating, it's actually a lot higher than Atkins. So all the unlimited non-starchy veggies you want. So broccoli, kale, cauliflower, all those types of veggies in unlimited amounts. So you should have vegetables at every meal. I say some starchy veggies because I don't want someone eating potatoes breakfast, lunch, and dinner, right? So you've got to get a large variety of good carbs in, and they should be like different squashes, sweet potatoes, those types of things. So some starchy carbohydrates from veggies. Now, the more you exercise, the more of those starchy veggies you should eat. So that's another bonus to being more physically active. So lots of vegetables, every single meal. Fresh fruit, absolutely. But you should always eat more vegetables than fruit. So that's my rule of thumb for everyone. If they think that they're eating too much fruit and not eating enough veggies, you should always, by the end of the day, have eaten more vegetables than fruit. And then small amounts of natural sugar, like pure maple syrup or honey. You could use a little bit of stevia if you wanted to, but not all the time. Traditionally maybe we stumbled upon some honey once in a while and we eat it for a little while, but we weren't pouring tablespoons all day long in our coffee and tea. So still monitoring those things. So like I said, if you follow the template properly, you're never going to go over the 6 teaspoons, really. And then we get to fats. And I'm going to stop for a minute on fats and explain a little bit more, because if you take the other thing home besides the sugar, I want you to really focus on eating healthy fat. So we are going to cook with saturated fat. Who cooks with saturated fat? Like butter, ghee, coconut oil. Sounds scary to some people because saturated fat, we've heard, is very bad for us over time. There's actually lots of different types of saturated fat we're finding. Some saturated fat is actually essential. Our cells, our outer cell membrane, like the circle that surrounds every cell, actually has some saturated fat and needs it needed there to really support that cell's function. So we are going to cook with coconut oil, butter, and ghee, which are all solid at room temperature. They're saturated fats. And then we are going to use olive oil or avocado oil or other cold-pressed oils on ready-to-eat food. We are not going to heat them up. And I'm going to grab this bottle of olive oil because Rachel Ray has really done some damage when it comes to cooking with olive oil. So I feel like I have to spend a little bit more time on it. So olive oil, if you look at your bottle of olive oil, usually it says cold press, right? Dark glass container. So the company that made this knows that if they heat this oil up, it could potentially damage the bonds in the fat. So they cold pressed that oil. So if you think of an avocado, it's really oily, olives are really oily, so it didn't really require a lot of heat or chemicals to get the oil from it. They cold pressed it and they put it in this dark glass container to protect it. So you don't want to take it home and heat it up, right? Because you just paid for it to be cold pressed. So you never want to heat up olive oil, and I'm just going to spend a quick second so everyone can remember why. I'm still doing good on time? Okay. All right. So I'm limited with my one sheet of paper, so I'm going to use this one too, okay? So the most common fat in you and in our food is called a triglyceride. And that's different than when your doctor tells you that you have high triglycerides. That's really like you're eating too much sugar or too many carbs if you have high triglycerides. But technically, in us and in food, the most common fat is a triglyceride. And it looks like this. So it's something, it has a glycerol backbone, is this backbone, and then it has 3 long fatty acid tails. Has anyone ever seen this before? So this is most common fat in us, most common fat in this olive oil. So depending on how these long fatty acid tails look is really what determines what kind of oil or what kind of fat it is. So first we're going to zoom in on one of the long fatty acid tails of coconut oil, because coconut oil is solid at room temperature. So if we zoom in, and we're just going to like have to go back to high school chemistry for a second, and my organic chemistry teacher probably wouldn't like the way that I explain this, but I explain it in my own way, so.
It's okay, they're not here.
Yeah, they're not here. So we zoom in at that long fatty acid tail, and we see that it looks like this. It has a carbon at every kink in the chain, and then each carbon is surrounded by hydrogens. So I always remembered in organic chemistry that every carbon likes to have 4 friends. It always wants to have 4 lines shooting out of it. So it has 2 lines to connect it to each of its carbon, and then because it wants to have 2 more friends, it has 2 hydrogens connected. So this carbon chain is totally saturated in hydrogen. It's a saturated fat, so that's where we get the term saturated. It's saturated in hydrogens. Now, if we think back to general chemistry, single bonds are really strong, right? They tolerate a lot of heat. We can heat them up, they're not going to break. We can expose them to a lot of light, they're not going to break. And that's why we're heating up coconut oil or butter, because they're all single bonds and it can tolerate a lot of heat. We want to keep those bonds intact. We don't want them to break. So let's go to a monounsaturated fat, like olive oil, or cold pressed olive oil, is monounsaturated. So mono means 1, so we've got 1 unsaturated bond. So instead of 2 more hydrogens, this has 2 lines connecting it. It's got 1 unsaturated bond, 1 double bond. So again, let's think back to high school chemistry. Double bonds have a lot of energy, right? They break really easily. We can heat them up, we can expose them to light, and that bond can break. So if we throw that olive oil in a pan, what's going to happen? It's going to break, right? So this bond breaks. And that actually creates a free radical. So when you hear about reducing free radical damage, you don't want to smoke because of a bunch of free radicals. You don't want to be exposed to a lot of chemicals or pollution. Free radical damage. We have lots of diseases that are connected to free radical damage. Cardiovascular disease, cancer, neuropathy, lots of things. So breaking that bond creates a free radical. So you don't want to heat this up because you don't want to eat a bunch of free radicals we're going to use lots of olive oil and avocado oil on our ready-to-eat foods. So we're going to pour it on salads. I will even cook chicken, like grilled chicken, and pour some olive oil on it after it's cooked. So just pouring olive oil, avocado oil, using those things liberally, we need lots of good fats. When this bond is in place, it's actually very anti-inflammatory and so good for you. So you need that bond to be in place. So it can either work wonders or it can do damage. So let's get to our other guys. And I know we haven't talked about no foods yet, but we're going to for a second. So let's look at polyunsaturated fats. Any ideas of like most commonly consumed polyunsaturated fats? Yeah, vegetable oil, right? So corn oil, yum. I can't believe it's not butter. Oh, God, I know, right? Dr. Oz had it on the other day. So polyunsaturated. So we have many polyunsaturated bonds. So what happens when we heat this guy up? Right? Like, oh, terrible, terrible. Because we've got all these potential places for those bonds to break. So much potential free radical damage. So let's think about corn oil. Think of a piece of corn. When you pick a piece of corn, is it oily? No, right? It's a piece of corn. So how in the world do we make a bunch of oil from corn? A lot of heat. We heated up that corn like crazy and we used a ton of chemicals. So think of the bottle of vegetable oil or corn oil in the grocery shop. It's in a clear plastic sheet jar, right? So those bonds are already broken. It's already damaged goods. Terrible. So we've got lots of potentials for free radical damage. So even if you buy that bottle of vegetable oil or a box of cereal, if you look, it's always going to have canola, corn, soy oil. Even if you buy that and don't heat it up, it's already damaged. You're already consuming free radicals. So Paleo template also takes that away. Now, when they're looking at plaque or atherosclerosis that's building up in our arteries, they're finding that most of that plaque is actually oxidized polyunsaturated fats. So 50 years ago, we were eating a lot of butter, right? We were going to the movies, they popped popcorn and coconut oil, awesome. And then we got scared. We got scared of saturated fat because of a man named Ansel Keys, which I would love to talk about, but I can't spend a ton of time. But we got really scared of saturated fat. And so we thought, oh, let's do something else. So we started using soybean oil, corn oil, canola, all those vegetable oils. We started heating it up, making it, and now we consume 70% of our fat from this guy. And look at all of those inflammatory diseases are just skyrocketing. So really, Paleo template really takes this away. So let's also just nuts and seeds, avocados. Some people on a paleo diet do eat a little bit of full-fat dairy, and I'll talk about that in a second. Some people can tolerate dairy and some people can't, but if you decided to include dairy, you really want to make sure it was full-fat and not as processed as some of those low-fat products. So foods avoided. So let's kind of get through this, and then I'll answer some questions if you have questions. Protein. Like I said, most protein products or protein foods are fair game, but no fake man-made products. On your sheet, actually, I don't have the same one that you guys have, but if you turn it, there's a product on there, like a list of ingredients, like a food label. I actually took a picture of it, Kroger. So if you look at that long list of ingredients, this product was actually in the health food store area at Kroger. It's one of their simply natural, buy me unhealthy items. It said low cholesterol, high protein, whatever it was on the front. If you turn it around and look at the ingredients, do you even know what that is? Could you guess what that was? No. Yeah, right? It's actually one of the vegetarian chicken nuggets. So they're really marketing it as a healthy food product that's high in protein. But really, if you just bought a piece of chicken, right, the ingredient would be chicken. So just those things are definitely obviously on the no list. So we're trying to decrease our food products. Carbs, no grains, We want to avoid all those anti-nutrients that we talked about, that phytic acid, the leptin. We want to prevent that surge in dopamine. We don't want foods acting on those opiate receptors. So we're trying to break our food addiction and really get all the nutrients from our food. So we're not going to eat grains or grain-like products. So that really includes corn. So no corn, no grains. No concentrated sweets or added sugar, and I kind of say that cautiously because you could have some concentrated sweets. I consider honey a concentrated sweet. I consider raisins a concentrated sweet. So you're going to have some of those natural things in small amounts, but not all the time, all day. No low-fat dairy or flavored dairy products. So none of that flavored yogurt, that's cold cereal in disguise, that you see in the yogurt section. And then fats. Obviously, we are not going to want to eat free radicals, so we are going to avoid all of our crop industrialized oils that are on our list there. So I have some paleo basics there, and I'm just going to hold up because obviously I would love to card in a whole bunch of paleo food to show you what you should be eating, but I did not have time to pack up that. So I do have some pictures to kind of show you. So paleo basics, always start with protein. So breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you should have some sort of protein. That's the first thing I think about. If I'm in a rush for food prep, if I'm trying to spend an hour or two in my kitchen on Sunday to kind of prep some meals ahead, that's really what I think is, okay, what am I going to have for protein? Because that's really going to set you up for failure if you're not eating protein in all your meals to keep you full and to help support healthy blood sugar levels. So always protein in each meal, always fat in each meal, and always veggies. So you've really got to have those three components. One of my favorite things that I make during food prep are mason jar salads. Has anyone ever used mason jars to store salads? It keeps them fresh for 4 or 5 days. So what I do is I get all my goodies up in a row in bowls, cut up my veggies, I cook some chicken, maybe hard boil some eggs, whatever it may be, and then I just layer them. I put some olive oil and vinegar at the bottom, or a paleo dressing of your choice if you can make your own. And then I put the heartier veggies like broccoli, carrots, and then I kind of just load it on up and I end with lettuce. And when you seal those tight, they're really going to last for a while in the fridge, like 4 or 5 days. And that's something easy that you can just grab for lunch, if you're in a hurry. So I'm going to pass those around. Breakfast for me is usually eggs and some sort of veggie. But I will tell you, one of the best things that you can do when you follow the paleo template is really get out of the mindset of breakfast foods, because breakfast foods are a bunch of junk. Croissants, donuts, like bagels, cereal, really, ugh. So you can eat eggs. I love to eat eggs, but I never want to get sick of them. So I don't actually eat eggs every day for breakfast, but you got to get out of the breakfast mindset. Dinner leftovers for breakfast is a really regular thing in my house. So I am going to say that sometimes breakfast for me starts like this. I throw some veggies in a skillet with some oil, I cook them, I throw some eggs in, and it just ends up being a mess. Or sometimes it's nicer. Sometimes I eat fried eggs with some veggies. But there's always vegetables at breakfast. And sometimes it's things like this. It's ground beef that I had cooked as part of food prep with cooked carrots. So there's a large variety of things that you can do, but getting out of the mindset of specific meal patterns can be really helpful. Just keep these coming. Another big question that I sometimes get is, well, what about bread? I can't eat bread. No, you can't eat bread. You're not going to miss it. You're going to feel so much better. But sometimes you do want something to hold your food in. So I use red cabbage leaves a lot, or just romaine lettuce. It's a super easy thing that you can do. There's been a few times this past month where I haven't had time to pack my lunch. I leave a few minutes earlier rather than driving through someplace to get something to eat. I actually stop at the grocery store, I run in, maybe I grab a rotisserie chicken, some romaine lettuce, and avocado, and I make some sort of little wrap really fast. So, that is always an option, is looking for some faster options. So always protein, veggies at every meal. I do have some other pictures up here I'm going to leave. Other basic things, obviously, yes, you have to go to the grocery store, you have to cut up veggies, you have to food prep a little bit, which sounds tedious if you're not used to doing that, but once you get in the habit, you will realize that there are so many beneficial aspects to doing some food prep once or twice a week. Packing your food. You gotta bring some food with you usually if you don't know what's gonna be available. Pack some snacks like nuts and seeds, have some apples, whatever it may be, kind of accessible to you so you don't necessarily want to grab something that you know you shouldn't. And then the last thing I have there is just a 30-day challenge. So trying to do this for 30 days is really my best piece of recommendation. I don't know if I'm saying it. It's my best piece of advice. So setting 30 days aside. If you eat a lot of this stuff right now, then maybe you're not going to start this tomorrow. Maybe you're going to spend the next few weeks trying to get some of this out of your life and doing a little bit more food prep. But following a paleo template 100% for 30 days can really show you how beneficial it can be. I'm not saying that you have to follow it 100% of the time after that, but following it for 30 days, I guarantee by the second or third week, you will have more energy during the day, you will be sleeping better, you will not be craving sugar or carbs all day, you will just have so much more energy. So there's a lot of different benefits, but really doing it for 30 days strict can really show you those things. And then maybe after 30 days, you do incorporate some full-fat dairy back in. So some things are a little bit modifiable, but I would just recommend trying to do it for 30 days and seeing how you feel. Now to see how you feel, I would recommend rating your health before you start. So I would just, on a scale of 1 to 10, reflect and say, how healthy do I feel right now? Sleep, energy, digestion, brain fog, concentration. Rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10. I'm working with a client right now who's actually, who lives in New York City, and she rated her health at 2, which makes me so sad because she's a young girl in her 30s, she lives in New York City, and I never honestly, I know this sounds negative, I'm going to be a negative Nancy, I didn't know if she could do it, if she could follow a paleo template. She lives in New York City, she doesn't have a car, she can't drive to the grocery store, she's got to take the train, the subway, to the grocery store to get food, to bring it back, and she can only get what she can carry. So doing food prep once a week, she can't carry all that stuff back, so that made it a little bit more difficult. But she did it. She has been now 6 weeks strong on a paleo template. She food preps 2 or 3 times a week, just an hour at a time for the next few days. So she was at a 2 when we started, now she's at an 8.
Cool.
Yeah, she is sleeping better, she's not bloated anymore, she has more energy, and that's just after 5 to 6 weeks of really following this template. So it can make an absolute huge difference, and it is possible if you are busy or stressed, whatever it may be, only allow you to handle that stress so much better. So, does anyone have any questions before I turn it over to Josiah? Yes?
I wanted to ask about the legumes. Why aren't legumes good?
So legumes usually are on our no list, like our beans, and that is something that is modifiable. So beans or legumes actually contain some of those anti-nutrients that we talked about, like the phytic acid, so they can be a little bit inflammatory for your gut. So because of that, if you were going to say, I'm going to do this for 30 days, I would avoid that. When you were done with the 30 days, if you wanted to eat some legumes again, and some people do, you just have to sprout them, and that will decrease some of the anti-nutrients. But they should still just be a once-in-a-while sporadic type food. They should not be like a staple in your daily diet. But if you sprout them, it'll make them more digestible.
So when you're talking legumes, that's like all beans, pinto beans.
Yeah, I know. You can do it. I tell you, you can do it. Yes.
2 questions.
Yes.
Number 1, I have heard that a lot of the olive oil, even if it's advertised as pure cold pressed, is adulterated.
Possible, yeah. There was recently, maybe just a couple days ago, a large study that came out that like 7% of the olive oil isn't actually real olive oil. I believe it. I mean, as sad as that is, I don't necessarily trust a lot of large like food companies. I would recommend getting an organic, extra virgin, cold pressed olive oil from a little bit more of a reliable company, and from one that obviously takes care of their product by putting it in a dark glass jar. So I haven't read everything about that. This is actually one we carry at Bassett's.
The question
yes.
to go with that is that how can you tell? I've heard that if you refrigerate it and it clouds, it's pure.
It should cloud and even get solid when you refrigerate it.
If it's pure.
If it's pure, yeah, so you could try that if you wanted to. I'll tell you, whenever I use this one and I make those mason jar salads and I pour this at the bottom, when I take it out, I have to let it set for a little while because it is solid at the bottom. Yeah, it should get solid at the bottom. Yeah, and you also want to make sure you get one that's in a dark container because if someone's letting it exposed to light, it's going to oxidize those bonds.
Second question is, as far as cooking oils, so to speak, for centuries, they used bacon grease.
Perfect.
Okay, I still use bacon grease.
Wonderful.
I save all my
Lard, bacon grease, yes. So because that's solid,
because it's very, it has.
yeah, so it's that saturated fat, it's not going to, their bonds aren't going to break and be oxidized when you cook it. So yes, that would be a perfect option. Did you have a question?
I was going to ask about quinoa because I can't remember. I know it's like it's not a grain or it's
Yeah.
not.
Technically, it's not a grain. It is very grain-like, so it's on that list of foods that you wouldn't eat. If you sprout your quinoa, it's going to be a little bit more digestible, but technically it's on our no list if you were going to try and follow the paleo template. I will say that if you couldn't, like when I'm saying that sometimes I might do like 80-90% paleo, if you are going to eat grains, it would be better to get some of those gluten-free grains like quinoa or rice, and eat the whole grain. So like if you're going to have rice, eat rice. Don't eat like rice products like rice pasta. So you could do that, in small amounts once in a while. That would be better than eating like some gluten-containing grains. But yeah, quinoa technically is on our grain-like food list. Yes.
Just to recap something you said, I think I didn't hear you say specifically, but sprouted versus unsprouted is really a key for anything.
Yep, so sprouting really helps break down some of that phytic acid and lectin, those like things that might cause some inflammation in your gut. That's like the plant's natural defense mechanism, and so when it's sprouted, it really helps to decrease that a little bit. Makes it more of a live food.
Well, I grew up on a farm. You could store grain dry indefinitely, but as soon as you let a little water get to it, the stuff takes off.
Yeah.
And so the food value then at that point, I think, is when it gets released.
Yeah, I'm honestly not sure a lot about the storage of grain, but yeah. Any other questions or anything? All right, so also I just want to say before Josiah starts with Bonebroth, as you go on like a paleo adventure, I guess you could say, you'll find that it's not really as much once you are a few months in or a few years in about what you're avoiding, but about all the things that you can add in, which is really what I try to focus on now. So not only am I avoiding all this stuff, but I'm trying to add in things that are really going to nourish me as much as possible, like fermented foods and bone broth. Those are two of the big ones, and on a daily basis can be so beneficial, not only for our guts, but just our overall health. So not only avoiding things, but trying to incorporate more nutrient-dense foods and things into your diet. Yeah, so bone broth is amazing. It's really anti-inflammatory, it's great for bone health, it's great for your skin, for gut, lots of different reasons, and it's super cost-effective. One of the most, I would say, like, staple things that you can learn how to incorporate in your day in your kitchen. All right, I'm done. Thanks for